Well, imagine showing up for your next flight at the airport and being handed a device, a little bracelet, that would serve as your boarding pass. It would track your lost luggage, and it would also shock you with the same power as a taser if you get out of line. Well, a top official with the Department of Homeland Security has expressed interest in these so-called safety bracelets.
That's right, you heard her. Shock you with the power of a taser if you get out of line. Now, if they were talking about animals, animal rights activists would be up in arms like it's the end of the world. Where's the advocacy group for free Americans?
This is a buzz on the blogosphere right now, whether this is going to happen and when. Turns out DHS, Department of Homeland Security, did express interest in this product in 2006. Not clear, however, whether this is something they're still interested in. But is it possible, Neil? Could we get to the point in air travel where we have to put on a bracelet where the stewardess can shock us if we get out of line?
Well, I don't think that element of the shock part of the bracelet is going to be adopted, but I do think that there is some truth in this story. The Department of Homeland Security and our aviation security people are looking for better ways of tracking luggage and passengers at an airport. And what you may get is an RFID chip put into your ticket or maybe into a bracelet that you wear in the airport so that they can track you. It would also certain areas of the airport and set off an alarm if you went into an area that you shouldn't. But the good news is it also might, if we start tracking luggage that way, it might mean a lot less lost luggage.
All right, I like the lost luggage part of it, but you're going to have the ACLU go nuts if people are required to wear a tracking bracelet just to board an aircraft.
Well, look, first of all, flying is not a right. It is a privilege. And so that's why we have the security that we have in airports today, and that's why you have to comply with it. And so ultimately, if we can find some way of doing this in an appropriate way, and this is kind of an exaggerated story. Yes, they did express an interest in this, apparently had a meeting with this one individual who has this one device. But if they ultimately ever do this, it's going to be quite different than what we're talking about today. And we may see actually these kinds of devices put on felons in order to get parole, people that are pedophiles so that they it sets off an alarm if they get too close to a school. We may see all sorts of applications of this down the road.
Now, that doesn't sound too bad. I mean, you've got somebody who's literally under suspicion or having been convicted of doing something illegal. That's one thing. If you've just got people who are trying to get from Chicago to New York, it seems like it's another. But, you know, in a post-9/11 world, who's to say? Let me ask you, Neil, how would it work? So you get your little bracelet and you get out of line. How do they go about picking you and knowing which bracelet to shock, if you know?
Well, again, I don't think there's going to be a shock element on it. I think that's going too far. But what they will be able to do is, let's say that they need to find you, and it may be just because you've fallen asleep and missed your flight. You always hear that paging in the airport for Mr. So-and-so, please come to your gate right now or we'll have to take off your luggage. Well, that's very inconvenient. It screws up security and so on. And what they will be able to do is isolate where you are in the airport simply by, you'll have a blip on the screen, and there'll be a number attached to it that corresponds to whatever is in your bracelet or in your ticket, and they'll be able to go find you.
Well, it looks like, as you say, DHS will not purchase the bracelet for now, but when they expressed interest in it, let's make it clear, they said we're interested in the immobilizing security bracelet and look forward to receiving a written proposal. They were looking for the stunner, one that can completely immobilize you for several minutes. However, they say now they've decided against it. So
exactly.
We'll see whether it comes back into the bloodstream. Neil, thanks so much for your insights on it.
He is a 9/11 survivor, the last person out of the World Trade Center North Tower. Well, on September 11th, William Rodriguez saved an estimated hundreds of people from the World Trade Center after putting his own life on the line. He then became trapped under the debris from the tower for hours before rescuers managed to free him from the rubble. And here with us now to share his really amazing story is William Rodriguez. William, is it William, Bill, which do you prefer?
Maria, for you is Willie.
Thanks, Willie. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. We really appreciate it. Why don't you tell me what happened on that dark day?
Well, basically, we are doing a presentation. It's a story of hope, expectation, motivation, and disposition of what the human spirit can do in a moment of despair. I worked in the building for 20 years. I was the person in charge of all the stairwells of the North Tower. And on 9/11, I had the only master key that opened the doors that rescue people. This is the master key. They call it the key of hope. And basically, I was a janitor. Like I said, on that day, there was an explosion on the basement. And this is prior to the building got hit by the plane. And then the plane hit, and then there was a series of explosions afterwards. And a person comes running into the office saying, explosion, explosion, explosion. His skin was pulled all from his armpits all the way to the top of the fingertips, and pieces missing off his face, and then it was total chaos. I started putting people outside the building and went back inside 3 times, basically rescuing people from the basement. And then at the third time, I just went with the master key and I started opening the doors for the fire department so they could actually help people to escape from the stairwells. At the very last moment, there was a person on a wheelchair that needed to be basically given first aid. As I brought him down, the building started to collapse. Actually, I got him to the lobby. When I put him on the lobby, I went to set up an ambulance, and the building started to collapse. And I saw a fire truck, and I sleep right under the fire truck, and the building basically buried me. And I survived under the rubble. Everybody else died.
Oh, my God. I don't even really know where to go after that.
It's a very emotional event, but after 9/11, I became an activist, a leader for the victims. I created the Hispanic Victims Group and the Victim Support Group, and basically and I said, okay, I'm going to be late. I made it at 8:30 in the morning, 8:30. And I went straight to the basement, number 1 of the tower. The building has 6 sub-levels of basement, B1, B2, all the way down to B6. Our support office for American Building Maintenance, that was the company that I worked for, was located on B1. So I went there, I'm talking to the supervisor in front of the door, when all of a sudden at 8:46, talking to him, there's 14 people in the office, we hear, boom! An explosion so powerful and so loud that pushed us upwards in the air coming from below. And it was so powerful that all the walls cracked, the false ceiling fell on top of us, the sprinkler system got activated, and everybody started screaming in horror, help, 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 because we didn't know what was going on. Everybody screaming. The first thing that comes to my mind is that a generator just blew out on the mechanical room. The mechanical room was located right below us on the B2 basement number 2. And that's where you have all the generators, all the water pumps, all the machinery for the elevators. Everything was there. But I'm speculating. I'm speculating. I'm saying it's a generator to myself. Not that it ever was a generator, because I never know what it was. I never find out what it was. But when I went to verbalize it, because everybody's screaming in horror, we hear, bah! And an explosion all the way on the top of the building. And that was the plane hitting the top. 2 different events, separated by almost 7 seconds. Different events.
Engineers at the firm that built the building's best guess to account for the missing 1,200 feet of material from each tower is that large portions simply vaporized into the dust that rained down on New Yorkers immediately after the collapse. It was that powerful.
Get out of here!
We're talking here about 43,600 windows, 600,000 square feet of glass, 200,000 tons of structural steel, 5 million square feet of gypsum, 6 acres of marble, and 425,000 cubic yards of concrete, turned in good part into a cloud, says environmental medical doctor Stephen Levin.
I was astonished at the degree to which solid materials were turned into pulverized dust as a consequence of that building collapse. I think it was striking.
The Environmental Protection Agency has been sampling the dust, and one specialist told ABC they believe the clouds that appeared immediately after the collapse were mostly gypsum dust from drywall, cement dust, and plaster, which can cause problems.
Cement dust is an irritant. Fine glass powder is also an irritating material.
The EPA did find spotty levels of asbestos. A sample on a police car turned out dangerous. Another sample a couple of blocks away, not dangerous. But most interesting, in the mix, they are looking, they think, at specks of steel that used to be beams and elevators, marble from the lobby floor and facings, so what were once the strongest architectural elements in the two towers were pulverized, large portions turned into clouds like this one. Still, there is this mystery. If some of the hardest materials were vaporized, how to account for the presence everywhere of paper, fully intact letters, business forms, stationery. Paper is so fragile and combustible, and yet somehow, maybe because we have so much of it, it was everywhere. Robert Krulwich, ABC News, New York.